Memories stir in Evergreen. James mistakes the doctor for someone from his past, and a hidden love whispers back to life, shaking the village forever.
In Evergreen Village, memories never rest. This time, James confuses the doctor for someone from his past, a soldier who once stood by his side. But what happens next reveals a truth no one expected. A secret love, hidden for decades, whispers its way back into the light. And with it, the village will never be the same. Evergreen Village woke in silence, as if every wall was breathing slowly. The night's rain had left the ground wet and shining, and the smell of damp earth drifted in through the open windows. In the hallways, the clocks kept steady time. The sound was soft but constant, a reminder that time never stopped, not even for those who wished it would. The doors of the rooms were slightly open, and from inside came small signs of life, the scrape of a chair, the rustle of clothes being folded, the slow breath of someone tired. Maggie walked slowly toward the reading room. The blue diary, now resting on her table, seemed to pulse even from a distance. She knew its pages still held secrets, but she didn't have the strength to face them alone. Lily, her granddaughter, had become a light inside Evergreen, always smiling, always curious. But even the young can feel the weight of a name. And that name, hidden for decades, now lived in every corner of the village: Derek. Rosa tended the flowers in the garden. Her hands moved calmly, almost automatically, but her heart beat faster. Names, when they return, never come back alone. They carry stories, pains, and choices that never went away. Edward sat on the porch looking at the courtyard. The notebook open on his lap showed uncertain lines, not of walls or roofs, but of people. He, who had always drawn structures, was now trying to draw feelings. And there was James. The veteran walked the halls like a soldier lost between two worlds. Sometimes strong, sometimes fragile. His lips whispered a name that was more prayer than memory: Eleanor. But that morning, something different was about to happen. Evergreen's routine, always so predictable, was about to be broken by an unexpected encounter. James's past, locked away for so long, was ready to come out. When Dr. Alisson entered through the main hallway, carrying his folder of notes, James looked at him closely. And in his eyes, there was no present. There was war. There was a trench. There was a lost companion. James's eyes did not blink. He saw the doctor, but not a man in a white coat. He saw another face, from decades ago. Timelines blurred, and Evergreen disappeared. Dr. Alisson tried to smile, as he always did, but something in James's gaze stopped him. It was as if he was being measured, weighed, recognized by a past that wasn't his. Maggie, watching from the reading room, felt the air shift. It wasn't just confusion, it was raw memory, alive, breaking through the present like thunder. The veteran took a step forward. His body, bent by age, still carried the discipline of a soldier. And in his eyes, war burned again. Edward, sitting on the porch, raised his head. He knew that look well. It was the same he had seen in young men returning from battle. Eyes that saw ghosts. Rosa pressed her hands to her chest. The name hanging in silence, the one everyone avoided, seemed ready to be spoken again. James murmured something, low, almost without sound. Some heard, others didn't. But everyone felt the weight. Broken promises. That's what he spoke of. Words scattered, but carrying years of meaning. The doctor, confused, tried to change the subject, asking about James's health. But James didn't answer. He wasn't there anymore. In the old soldier's mind, Evergreen's hallway became a muddy trench. The clock's tick turned into gunfire. The smell of damp earth mixed with gunpowder. Arthur, drawn by the tension, appeared at the doorway. Silent, he watched. The piano in the corner seemed to wait for a single note that could break the moment. Maggie closed her eyes. She no longer knew if she feared the secrets more, or the silence they carried. Lily peeked from behind the door. To her, it was like watching a play that had never been rehearsed. Everything was too real. James lifted his hand, as if holding something invisible. His fingers trembled. Then, one word crossed the space. A name. It wasn't Eleanor. It wasn't Derek. It was another name, one no one expected. The impact was immediate. Rosa gasped. Edward's eyes widened. Maggie covered her mouth. Lily frowned, not yet understanding. The doctor, unsure, stepped closer. But to James, he wasn't a doctor. He was a brother in arms. And in that brotherhood, there had been more than friendship. There had been a promise. James staggered, the weight of remembering too heavy for his body. Rosa rushed to hold him. But he kept speaking. His words were fragments, pieces of a truth buried for decades. Maggie moved closer too. She knew this wasn't a time for silence. It was a time to listen. Edward breathed deeply, as if every confession was also a burden he recognized. Arthur stepped in slowly, leaving the piano behind. He knew sometimes silence needed witnesses. James closed his eyes. Tears brimmed but did not fall. His voice rose again, the name repeated. It was clear now. That name was not just memory. It was love, hidden love, silenced love. The air grew heavy, but no one moved. They knew they stood before something greater than themselves. Rosa whispered only to herself, "My God." But she didn't dare interrupt. Lily finally understood, and with a tight chest, she realized James's life wasn't only battles. It was also love the world never allowed. The clock struck again, marking time. But for James, this moment was eternal. Then silence fell. Nothing more could be said. Only the echo of a love unspoken, revealed too late. The hallway of Evergreen stayed in silence after James's words. It was as if the walls themselves needed time to absorb what had just been revealed. Maggie stood still, her eyes wet. She knew she was witnessing something the world had never allowed James to speak. Rosa kept holding his arm, feeling the tremor of both age and memory. Edward lowered his eyes. In his mind, he drew invisible lines, not of houses, but of broken promises. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, as if searching for a note strong enough to hold that silence. But no music could. Lily watched, confused but touched. For her, it was like finding a hidden piece of humanity, fragile, yet powerful. James opened his eyes slowly. He still seemed caught between two times, but clarity came in flashes. He should not have been forgotten, he whispered. And they knew it was not just a comrade, but someone he had loved in the middle of war. Maggie breathed deeply. Pain filled the air, but so did a strange relief. The secret was no longer buried. The clock ticked louder, as if it too honored the moment. Rosa discreetly wiped away a tear. There were things she herself had never told. Secrets that might, someday, surface too. Edward stepped closer and set a light hand on James's shoulder. He said nothing. Sometimes silence was the only true kind of company. The doctor, still unsettled, stepped back. He realized he stood not before a patient, but a living story. Maggie touched Lily's arm, drawing her close. She wanted her granddaughter to understand. This was not shame, it was life. Real life, with hidden hurts and hidden loves. That night, Evergreen felt smaller. Every room, every hallway, seemed to hold James's memory in its walls. Arthur returned to the piano, but he did not play a happy tune. Only loose notes, like broken breaths, drifted through the air. In her room, Maggie opened the blue diary again. She thought of Derek, she thought of Thomas, and now she thought of James. Their lives were all intertwined, like roots beneath the earth. Rosa, alone in her bed, remembered the names she had avoided saying. How many secrets still lived in Evergreen? Edward sketched in his notebook. Not houses this time, but faces. Faces marked by lines of time, and by affection too. Lying down, James murmured softly. Not Eleanor's name, not Derek's. But the name he had revealed that afternoon. And his voice carried tenderness, as if it were a prayer. The moon lit the village. Outside, the garden seemed to bear silent witness. Rosa's flowers were open, as if listening too. The next morning, breakfast was taken in silence. But it wasn't the heavy silence from before. It was a reflective silence, like the kind that follows a confession. Lily didn't take her eyes off her grandfather. Now she wanted to know more, not just the wars he had fought, but the loves he had lived. Arthur played again. This time the music was softer, almost like a request for peace. Rosa approached Maggie. They looked at each other, and no words were spoken. But there was understanding. Both knew. Secrets, sooner or later, always find a way out. On his porch, Edward looked toward the horizon. In his notebook, he wrote a short line. Some foundations break, but others hold to the end. James walked to the garden with slow but steady steps. He lifted his eyes to the flagpole and saluted a memory only he could see. Lily followed him. She stayed a few steps behind, watching. For the first time, she saw her grandfather not only as a tired man, but as someone who had loved deeply. The wind blew hard, shaking the old trees. And in that sound, everyone felt as if the past still lived among them. How many other secrets did Evergreen still keep? Evergreen Village was not the same after that afternoon. The unexpected encounter between James and Dr. Alisson reopened wounds that time had never been able to heal. In the eyes of the veteran, the doctor was no longer just a visitor, he became the living memory of a fallen brother in arms. The hallways, once quiet, now carried the weight of unspoken questions. Rosa, Edward, and Maggie felt that James was guarding a secret larger than anyone could imagine. The past was not only returning, it was demanding to be heard. During the night, James whispered words that sounded like prayers, but among them a name appeared that no one expected, a name filled with tenderness, pain, and forbidden love. A black soldier, a man who had marked his soul forever. The silence of Evergreen broke in that instant. It was no longer the loneliness of its corridors, but the sound of truth knocking at the door. A secret powerful enough to change not only James's memory, but also the way everyone in the village understood the weight of war, the power of love, and the fragility of broken oaths. And so, the story closed on suspense. Because they all knew that what was coming would not be just the revelation of a name, but the revelation of a heart that, even after decades, still beat for what was never allowed to be spoken.